much for joining us today. Really appreciate you jumping on and having a chat with me. The reason we are doing this video series is in line with our Be Epic campaign. So it's all about extraordinary people, inspiring change in businesses. So I know that you are a very good guest for us to have on, so I'm excited about this. So let's just go straight into it. In terms of the industry, big broad question, but what excites you about it at the minute?
I think what excites me is what excites pretty much everybody, and what has been scaring us. So the change that we've been going through with COVID in the past month definitely accelerated digitalization, work from home, generally moving everything into that direction at such an elevated pace that I think, especially for cyber professionals, we've gone from having a very, very busy job before to a very, very busy job on the third right now, trying to keep everything going and everything going safe, whilst we're moving and dragging the companies along in this accelerated digitalization path.
Yeah. Do you think the industry was ready for that change in terms of its infrastructure and the people in it, or do you think it was a little bit behind being able to cope with that change?
We've seen definitely and I've seen very, very much differences. I think there were some companies that were ready for it, or at least it wasn't necessarily a true shock. So I work in consulting. Your general consultant will be able to work whenever there's internet and a laptop. Some other services, manufacturing, even some asset management clients of ours have gone through a bit of a shock. And of course, there are very hard hit areas like travel and hospitality services, where of course you're trying to figure out new ways of doing things, but those are very much businesses that cannot fully move online. As much as we can try, we can't replicate all of a pub's feeling online, but I think generally speaking, it's been something that most industries were maybe caught unaware of, but managed to, in the past month, come to an understanding and come to profit from the opportunity of this crisis.
Yeah. And do you think that eventually it will lead to positive changes?
I think so. I think what I've seen is, change is always hard, and especially if you weren't prepared for it, and none of us were. Let's be perfectly honest. But it's digitalization didn't start, in January of this year. Cyber issues didn't start in the January of this year associated with it. So I think the winners of this race will definitely be those companies who can make the most out of this change. And for those who were maybe a little bit laggards, or maybe they were more traditional and risk-averse organizations, I think they got the jolt to be moving to this direction, which ultimately will be to their benefit as well.
Yeah. Okay. So if we kind of dive into your career in cyber and in information security, where did it all start?
I think it all started at a university. So in uni, I was working for, next to university, for an asset management company, a private equity company. And kind of one of their investment was an online marketplace, a bit of a Eastern European copy of eBay, if you will. Um, and yeah, that was a point where when I came in, I was just helping the investment managers make sense of the business as well. But when I peeked a little bit under the hood, I managed to realize that they had very lax security. So at that point in time, they weren't the number one on the marketplace, and it could have been very easy for an attacker to basically just take all of their customer data. And what I told my bosses at the time is like, your competitor can just write an email to everybody and say, hey, come over to my site. It's going to
Yeah.
be that much cheaper to
Yeah.
sell your things on my site as opposed to the site that we owned. And everybody was completely shocked to say, you can do that? Oh my God, that basically will negate all our investment into this. So I think that's where everything started to go down the cyber path, and I kind of realized like, it's interesting that there
Yeah.
is this kind of issue and risk, and there's something maybe beyond the movie screen allure of hackerdom
Yeah.
that you can build a career on. And I was studying IT management, so I came to this more from the management and risk side as opposed to the hardcore techie, let's see, the network vulnerabilities side. I kind of grew into it, I would say. I picked up some of the skills during university, and then throughout my career, I tried to, set my sights into a little bit of both worlds at the same time,
Okay.
business and
Yeah.
technology through the cyber lens.
Yeah. And if you could go back and speak to your younger self, knowing what you know now about the industry, what would you say to yourself?
Um, you will not believe how much this thing is going to blow up,
Yeah.
because I know. I mean, if you would have asked me like 15 years ago when I was still in uni to say, oh, you went into this industry, is it gonna be big? No, the SAP guys were the big ones,
Yeah.
the finance system guys were the big ones, and kind of cyber was seen as part of, we do something around infrastructure, and yeah, you need to secure it. And yes, we've seen the Matrix, but I mean, who's gonna actually shut down a power plant using a computer, or wreak
Yeah.
chaos on massive scale in the financial system? And that's where we are today, right now. So I think looking into it, I could not have guessed that it's going to be this much of a wild ride. But it turned out to be that something I was fortunate enough to go into as sort of a hobby, and as sort of something that interested me, has become this wonderfully complex and important thing to do.
Yeah. And do you think there is enough conversation at that level of young people that there are these careers in cyber? Because like you said, I think you see it in a movie and you think that it's all about hackers and the Matrix and things like that. Do you think there is enough realistic conversation around the career prospects in the industry?
I definitely don't think it is. So I think there is this allure of, cool hacker things, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I mean, I spend most of my time looking at Excel sheets and PowerPoint documentation. So there's definitely a bit of a disconnect in what you do. However, of course, we do have penetration testers working in here,
Yeah.
working in the company as well. But I think what we're still missing is the reach out to say this is a very stable and attractive
Yeah.
career. So you'll never be bored doing this job, because there's something new every day that you can learn, and also this is something that's going to just keep growing and keep
Yeah.
being a bigger part of our lives. So I'd be hard pressed to say what's a job that is as future proof as being in cyber, even with automation. Other parts of IT and technology are in a constant flux. I think cyber is one of those things that just follows the constant flux, because you're gonna need people to play defense,
Yeah.
and every now and again a bit of offense, just to test the systems. Regardless of what the systems are. So we've seen so many changes in the industry moving. We moved from mainframe systems back to mostly endpoints. Now we're moving things back to the cloud as well. There's definitely trends. So the other thing that you will never get tired of is learning about new things. There isn't a day, a month, or a year where I wouldn't say, okay, I now have known everything there is to know in
Yeah.
cyber, and I don't need to learn anything new.
That would be the day.
Something new will come up
Yeah.
every single day, which just keeps things interesting. And I think that's the
Okay.
third thing that we just don't tell our people that come to this career.
Yeah.
Very few universities who do have the master's programs
Yeah.
tend to give a glimpse, but I would want it to be more part of a general IT, computer sciences
Yeah.
curriculum as well. Not just one elective, one semester, but it would be great to open the world up to them as well.
Yeah. And talking about the future, obviously, and getting more people in cyber, whether this be a younger generation, cross-skilling, obviously the huge focus and topic of conversation within the industry is around the equality and diversity. So what is your take on this at the minute?
I always say that because how much the skill shortage in the industries is actually just so big that we need everybody.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter from race, creed, or background. We need more people. And once we actually examine, the skills that you need in for this job, the difference of opinions and approaching of a single problem,
Yeah.
we're always working a problem out. So the more diverse teams that you have, the more difference of opinion you're able to bring into basically the solution, whether this be, a proactive designing a defense system, or an incident response, trying to, work backwards and figure out what has happened, the better your team is going to be. So I'm a big advocate in getting diversity included, including neurodiversity as well, because there have been peer-reviewed studies from the States, from Europe and UK as well, that shows that neurodiverse candidates actually have specifically the right skills of focus and attention to detail, which makes them uniquely capable to work as cybersecurity analysts. And the skills are there. It's the industry that I think needs to be more open to harness these skills, to benefit from these skills, and be able to open ourselves up a little bit and make the workplaces more beneficial for these people. Because at the end of the day, if we are able to do that as businesses, we will also benefit from more diverse teams.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you said, the industry's got such a huge skills shortage that no matter what their background or their race or sex, it just needs to be open for everybody to come through. And I think it obviously starts from a young age and educating people that are in schools and letting them know about the careers, but obviously also just opening the industry up to people that are, can cross skill into it. So I think that's really important. Do you think there will reach a point in our lifetime where we will see that skills shortage close, or the equality gap close, or not? Do you think it's going to take a lot longer?
I'm really hoping for the equality and inclusion to close, simply because of the pressure. Unfortunately, as I'd like to say that it's going to close because we're able to move heaven and earth, but I think it's simply the pressure that's going to move us. The skill shortage I don't think so, because we're still running after the speed of digitalization. We can't train and retrain people fast enough as the need is growing. And if we're going into quantum computing, quantum computers will be used to hack encryption. So there is what I generally say is, if you're in the defense side of the cyber industry, you're always a little bit behind of the attackers.
Yeah.
Trick is not to be more than a half a step behind. and this is going to, just as I mentioned before, it's going to grow, it's going to need more people. If we can start catching up, because currently the gap is just opening ever wider and wider.
Yeah.
If we can start a little bit closing it, that would be good, but I don't think we will see a point where we say we have enough people. Well, I hope to get to the point where we can say we don't have a shortage of 3 million open cyber jobs across the world, as I think ISACA has, or ISC Square had a study out on how many open jobs there are in the industry. But close it down to something more manageable.
Yeah.
That would definitely be good.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge number to even go at and think of a place to start. Crazy, but fingers crossed. I think you're right about the pressure, though. I think sometimes, I mean, the pressure is not a good thing, that if that's the only reason that the equality gap is going to close just because of pressure, I'm not sure whether that's actually coming from a good place or whether it will be more damaging long term. Do you think it would? Just because I know that some businesses are putting in quotas at board level to make sure that there's the gender and race equality, and it's like, do you think that will be more damaging than good, or do you think that's a good thing to have in
I
place?
think it's a good thing to have, and you mentioned before, it all starts in education. So
Yeah.
if we don't have, this is just the talent pipeline. If we don't have a diverse background of students coming through, we will not have a diverse background of
Yeah.
senior managers 10 years later to be able to perform these functions. So definitely, I think we need to do more, and it might seem damaging, or it might seem limiting to set up quotas and say, look, we need to do this. But for example, Germany, where I spent a decent chunk of my career in, they have set up very strict quotas for
Really.
women in the senior leadership, and I think that has started a positive change in trying to drag the few women who were in the position to step up as a limelight.
Yeah.
But in turn, those are examples that young women entering the workforce can relate to. And if you can
Yeah.
have somebody as the CEO of IBM, or the board member for technology for T-Mobile, as really a path to follow
Yeah.
to inspire the new generation, I think that's definitely something that helps us. So it's damaging a little bit, or it might seem unfair on the short term, but I think we need this this direct action in
Yeah.
order to be able to inspire the new generation, so that 5-10 years down the line, we will not be, it will be strange to say, why did we ever need these rules?
Yeah.
But the movement needs to start, so that we get to that good position where we all want to be.
Yeah, and I feel like we are at the start of this movement, and the conversations are happening, and I think everybody's sort of in the same boat and aligns with what they want from the industry. But I think it just needs to now have a bit of momentum to actually get going. And I think you're completely right about inspiring the new generation and inspiring change, which is essentially what this whole campaign is about. So to finish it off, I ask everybody that I do this interview with the same question. So who is the single most extraordinary person to have inspired change in your life?
So back in the early beginning of my career, my first management position, I had a really good boss who worked with me to start my career, and he was the one who gave me a really clear advice to say, yeah, Bence, you've got two choices basically. You can be working with people, become more of a manager, and it's going to be sometimes frustrating working with people, but you have that track. But equally, and it's just as fine to choose as a career path, and you're going to be just as good if you go and be a technical expert.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of mastering how to deal with organizations and people, you
Yeah.
master how to deal with systems. And I think that's still missing up to today, to tell people it's okay for you not to try and become a people manager. You can be a technical manager, you can be a technical SME, and from a respect, from an earning potential, it's simply whatever you feel more comfortable with. In the end, I eventually go and took, I think, the more traditional path. But I always tell my counselees, my mentees as well. Look, whatever feels comfortable for you, choose that one, because at the end of the day, this is a job. You have to have passion for it. I
Yeah.
always say you have to have a little bit of insanity to be working in cyber in a good way. That's also something I learned from this boss of mine. But I think he was the one who influenced me in saying, it's okay to forge your own path in this business, and it's something definitely I took to heart up until today and
Yeah.
going forward.
Well, it's important, isn't it, to make decisions that you actually are going to benefit from, because essentially it's your career and your life that you have to do this every day, and you need to be comfortable and happy and know that you can perform to your best ability. So it's best for you to be comfortable. So I think that's a good piece of advice. That's good.